Welcome to the Career Ready Podcast. Learn about resumes, cover letters, LinkedIn, interviewing, and all things you can be career ready with the Career Service Center at College of DuPage. I'm your host, Pierre Michaels, for today's episode. In addition to learning about resources and the job search process, an important part of being career ready is understanding career path. To help us explore the field of animation, I have Tony Venezia with me, who works as Department Chair for the Motion Picture Television Department and Professor of Animation here at College of DuPage. Tony, thanks for joining me for today's episode.
Oh, it's great to be here, Pierre.
So Tony, as we get started here, can you just provide a short introduction, or as we would like to call it, your elevator pitch?
All right. Well, I've been interested in animation since I was in third grade. Well, actually before that, but thinking about a career in animation started about that age. And when I was in high school, this was like a million years ago, I made my first animated film, and it won several awards, including a college animation competition. It was very encouraging because I was never very good at anything before that. It was a passion of mine, and I pursued it through college. I worked briefly for like a year and a half as a production assistant in Chicago. After I graduated, Illinois State, and then I was accepted to the grad program at UCLA in animation. That started my career, and I worked 25 years in Los Angeles. 15 years of that, I had my own company, and we did special effects and motion graphics for a lot of film companies, pretty much every major company, and a number of TV stations. And finally, that led us, my wife and I, deciding to move here because we're both from the Midwest and we wanted to raise our kids. And I worked, when I first moved here, I worked on the Oprah Winfrey Show for 4 years. And I picked up a job at another company called Total Living Network, and I was doing all their show opens and graphics and things like that. And then about 5 years later, in 2005, I was working at COD part-time, and I applied for a full-time position in my program, and I got the job. And part of my position was setting up the animation program. So that came to life at about 2007, I think, is when we formally opened the degree up. And it's been growing ever since.
So I want to go off our list here a little bit. I want to hear a little bit more about you, because the field you've gotten into is very exposed to a lot of people. So I'm just curious, being interested in animation at such a young age, what was it that you saw that drew you towards it?
I'm not quite sure. I remember having debates with people when I was 5 and 6. When one of my neighbors was talking about animations being for little kids, and I was arguing with him about it. It's, no, you get good ideas from animation, and you can do really cool things. So at that point, I was aware that there was more to it than just that. In those days, they called them Saturday morning cartoons. Mm-hmm. So I was told I didn't draw well. And I found that to be one of the biggest lies of my life because I didn't realize that I could learn how to draw, which I did. And even though most of my career of animation was doing other things, and especially now I'm doing some drawing still, but working in 3D and things like that where you don't draw so much. I did my second animated film, in college, was kind of an in your face. It was an animated film. It had about 2,000 drawings, and my sister designed one or two characters, but I did most of all the character design. And it was more like, I don't have to listen to these people telling me I can't draw. That also won some awards, and I still show it once in a while because it's not that great, but for a film that somebody made with no teaching, no formal teaching and stuff like that, it's actually pretty decent. But that's my interest, was being able to talk through creating my own worlds. And that's really what you do with animation. It doesn't exist in the real world. And an animator brings their characters to life. And it's a way that's similar in some ways to theater, but it's very different because theater works with real people and we create a character. You draw a picture, and then how do you give that picture a personality? That's what animators do. And that's something that's always been fascinating to me.
Well, thanks for expanding on those different components. I think there's some really interesting nuggets within there. Just if someone is exploring animation and maybe they're told, well, you're not good at drawing, we'll keep working at it, develop those skill sets. But there's just a lot of different ways to be thinking about as you move forward there. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit more about the program here. Just the MPTV animation program here at College of DuPage, how does that prepare students, or what kind of career paths may that lead towards?
There's a lot of jobs in animation, and I think the vast majority of people look at Pixar, Disney, and companies like that, and there are jobs there. I will never, ever discourage anybody who has an ambition to work for one of those companies to do it, because personally, I've done it myself. I didn't work for Pixar, but Disney I did a lot of work for, and a number of other big production companies. I feel like if I can do it, so can somebody else. From College of DuPage, because I'm a former College of DuPage student, so we have those things in common. There's a lot of other areas in animation that people don't think about, like the field of medical. There's a lot of medical animations. There's a couple of college degrees, bachelor's degrees in medical animation. There's law reenactments and things like that for legal uses. There's a lot of stuff for trade shows. There's a lucrative living doing animations for trade shows. I have a list. When I proposed the program, I came up with like 40 or 50 different uses of animation that were not super extreme, like no one ever does this. It's like, oh, wow, I didn't know that. So there's kind of looking beyond the mainstream. Mm-hmm. I want to expand that a little bit. Yeah. All right. I learned something the hard way when I was interviewing in my early career, and I never got work until this guy told me how to interview. And he explained to me the importance of accepting an entry-level position, learning how the studios work, making contacts, put off the multi-mega million-dollar director job. You're not going to get that right out of school. But his advice opened up doors for me. Literally after that conversation, I was working 2 weeks later. So I really was messing up with my interviews. And the fact that he gave me some really good pointers on, and that thing about setting a goal, but knowing where you are at the moment and how do you get to that goal. I might have to do something that's not the most glamorous thing at first. The other part of that was doing those non-glamorous things like it's the greatest job in the world. So I saw that I needed to do my entry-level stuff to learn, and quickly I saw how important that was, even though, I wasn't able to imagine that before I was doing it. And it really helped me. It helped me the rest of my career. I mean, to this day, 50 years later, I'm grateful that I was hired to do like picking up cigarette butts. Those days you could smoke inside, scrubbing restrooms and things like that, running errands. On the other side of that, because I had a good attitude, there were some, like the director of this one company I did a lot of work for, the director of photography, told when we had downtime, would go over his secrets with me and say, "Hey kid, you know why he said that?" It was the lighting director, not the director of photography, but he would talk about all the various technical things of lighting that he did. And it was like, I was just, wow, this is so cool. I want to learn this. Those are things that I couldn't have taught myself. And I was getting paid not a lot of money, but I was getting paid to learn it. So those are lessons that you get and entry level that are going to help you the rest of your careers. And, anyway, that's my tangent. So
No, I appreciate that, because when we think of the careers in the field, right, you started off talking about Disney, Pixar, those big places, which is where my mind naturally goes towards. But to hear the variety in those many other types of work that someone could be doing. But then I think that perspective of there's, entry level and you work your way up is really important. And, I don't know if this was a takeaway, but just kind of talking about that, sitting down with the lighting director, my guess is you probably picked up on a lot that made your animation better because you realize various lighting aspects that maybe tie into a camera, but then in animation or, live animation, stop motion animation, those are all important factors that make your work better.
Well, especially in stop motion. But yeah, but even now with doing 3D stuff where you're dropping lights into a scene, that you can put a light in and say, oh, that looks good. But if you know you want to have a certain look, it's a lot easier if you understand the basics of lighting and how you can position lights in a real studio and get the effect that you're going for. It's not just putting light on something. The light creates a mood, so you want to have control over that as a director.
So picking up on all those little things as you get started in the career to make your work even better. So I guess that kind of ties into my next question for you. What skills or strengths do you see students and professionals picking up on utilizing to be successful in the field?
There's some of these are soft skills. And I think the most important thing is understanding that you can learn from your mistakes, and you have to you learn more, honestly, you learn more from a mistake than you do just doing it right. Because the mistake, it's kind of like a slap in the face at first. And then you have to get to the point where okay, wait, that was really wrong. It looks hideous, but I can make it better. And then you learn how to make it better. Some people, there's a lot of things that I'm debating on how to say this, so I'll just say it the way I think. There's a lot of training that goes into young children to the end of high school, probably even into college, where it's right or wrong. And that's not true. Mm-hmm. And if you get it wrong, you can get it right later if you know what you did wrong. But I see so many students who are afraid to make a mistake, so they don't have that freedom to experiment and to test and to push. So that's huge. Allowing that is one of the building blocks of being a good worker. Another thing is, I think it's more important now than ever. I've always had a good work ethic. Even when I had a job at this hot dog stand when I was in high school, I showed up on time. I worked my shift. I had a good attitude. When you get into a career, you have to do better than that too. You show up early, you stay late, you produce more than what you're supposed to produce with a good attitude. And I have a lot. We do advisory committee meetings, and one of the biggest complaints about workers, the new generation of workers, is that they don't respect deadlines. I think this is a good thing to learn from, because if that's the general statement consensus that okay, the young workers don't respect deadlines. They don't feel like showing up. They call 3 days later and say I didn't come yesterday. Okay, if you have a work ethic in that environment, you are going to rise to the top faster than it'll make your head spin. You have an opportunity to not be that person that doesn't care. You have the opportunity to go for it, to really shine, push yourself into doing the best work you can do, and having those soft skills that are maybe they're rare, maybe they're not. I don't buy that personally. I heard the same things when I was first in the job market about the baby boomers. Now we're the old timers. They're saying the same thing we were told, but I feel like the young generation has a lot of fresh new ideas, a lot of strength and power, and getting that into a focus is something that could really, really be very powerful.
Yeah, I appreciate you going to these soft skills. We talk a lot about these through our podcast, and I think of animation, I think of all those technical skills and abilities. But going back to what you said in that feedback you received as a kid, well, you're not a good drawer. Well, you could develop these technical skill sets, but to develop the ability to manage deadlines, I guess you could, get better at it. But that's something that you have to get better at. It's not something that the employer is going to be able to get you to be better at. Right? They could put the pressure on, they could request it, but it's really up to you as the worker to have that high work ethic. And then over time, that will pay off. So I really appreciate hearing that. And then going back to that first skill set, being willing to take those mistakes. We see this in studies of children being more creative than adults because they haven't learned that it has to be this way, right? They look at things outside the box and they can figure things out. So being able to keep those perspectives as you move forward in this field, I think could be really valuable.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
So are there different experiences or opportunities you would recommend developing animators seek out?
I think some of it has to do with when I was talking about getting your foot in the door somewhere. But also, I think it's important for the new people in the market to know what they want to do. Try to start looking at different companies. I give resources for my students to look at, and there's directories. Can I say, I don't know if, I doubt that they would come after me because I'm promoting them, but Chicago Creative Directory is a great directory for the Chicagoland area and production. And they have companies that do any type of production, from pre-production, planning, to the actual shooting of live action productions. Post-production takes in animation, editing, and things like that. The cool thing about this, in their listings, most of the companies have a website. You go to their website and learn about the company, and they'll have their demo reels there. And you can start studying what the state of the art is. What are professionals producing now? And then start seeing where you are with this. This, maybe there's some company that's doing projects that are like absolutely up your alley. That's for me. I can't wait to do that kind of work. And then a lot of times employers are more willing to talk with students who aren't looking for work about the career, because you're asking them to talk about themselves and their company and their successes and things like that. And in those meetings, when you wrap it up, you can always ask a question like, well, if you were to hire me, what skills would you want me to have specifically to your company? So those are really important things. So that's starting to develop a network. And I think networking is what's going to really 90% of the jobs you find are through networking. You can do all these Indeed and LinkedIn and things like that. And once in a while, you might land a job through that. But more times than not, an opportunity comes through a friend, or a colleague or something like that. And a lot of times they'll come where I'm really, a company comes to your friend and say, hey, I'm desperate. We got this project that starts tomorrow and we have to deliver by Friday. Can you possibly recommend anybody? And those are real and they happen. Mm-hmm. And they happen more frequently than you want to think. And when somebody gets one of those jobs, you shine on it, you just gave yourself a client who's going to back you and probably give you a bunch of other job leads too and hire you back on future projects. So those opportunities open up. And it might sound strange, but there's a lot of things hidden that if you look under the right stones, you're going to find.
There's a handful of different things out there that I've seen. And sometimes when people say what I'm about to say, it sounds like it's just made up, but there is actual studies, data out there supporting that 80% of the jobs that people secure are from networking. They're in what we call the hidden job market. They're not just freely advertised out there. They are through these connections. So that number may fluctuate a little bit, but 80% of the time, it is through these connections and seeking out these various opportunities. And can you restate the name of that listing?
Yeah, Chicago Creative Directory. And just do a Google search for it. It'll come right up.
Yeah, so that Chicago Creative Directory, knowing of resources like that is really a key to start that networking, being able to identify those opportunities. And then as you said, and this is something that we at Career Services promote a lot, you start doing this early on. Students that we're talking to, they're like, well, I'm far off from being a professional. I'm not there yet. But as you said, these professionals are more willing to talk to a student because they're just sharing information at that time. They don't feel that pressure of, oh, this person's looking for a job. They're looking for an internship. It's just looking for that knowledge. But then if you can have this conversation, find out those top skill sets they're looking for within their organization, Well, now you know what you should be developing and what you could be promoting as you move forward down that path. So let's talk a little bit more specifically about the program here at College of DuPage, and what are you doing to prepare students for the field?
Well, a lot of the things we talked about are things that I do in preparation, but I've kind of glossed over the technical things. So when I was describing animation and my interest in it, that's something that we do here. So starting with our intro to animation class, it's how do you bring life to a character? And we start out with a stop motion project. So let's say you have a water bottle, because there's one in front of me right now, and I want to give that a personality. So before I do anything, I want to write a story about this water bottle in front of me, and it's only going to be 10 seconds long, so it's not going to be a real detailed story. So what does the water bottle do? Does it have, maybe there's a hidden pencil that it likes to scare things, but it's not mean, but it likes to jump out and scare water bottles. So now, how do I show that the water bottle is timid? Through animation, through motion. So you do an analysis. So basically my story is this pencil that scares a water bottle. And like I said, 10 seconds. And then I want to define the pencil character and the water bottle, which I did a little bit. So I'd probably go into more detail with that. And then think about, okay, so if the water bottle is really scared, how's it going to move? Is it going to walk? And we're on radio, so I can't really show, but it's going to walk like, I'm the water bottle and nothing bothers me as I step, and you hear these long thump, thump, thump. Probably not. It's going to probably be kind of very mild motions, and like it'll move a little bit quickly and then stop, and it might even tremble a little bit. So those are things to think about. And what you can start to do, and this is really important, you can people watch, and you can look at characters in live action films and animations that you really like that have touched you. You know, so like, what is this? Whether it's a character like a strong character, weak character, whatever. What is it about that character that the animator brought to life, or the director in live action? So that's a big part of learning how to animate, is understanding what you're trying to accomplish with it. Those techniques that I talked about, is giving a personality to something, go to very, I guess, corporate videos of animated text as well, even if you're going to go that route. If you're doing character animation, you really have to know it. And so we cover animation principles. There's more than that involved with animation principles, which you can take my class and I can go through them all with you. But for now, we'll just do that as a general thing. And also in that class, my philosophy is to keep everything in the intro class hands-on. And we'll get into computer stuff in future classes. But learning how to move a character, once you decide how they should move, learning how to do that with your hand is much more impactful in the long term than setting up keyframes in an animation program, because you actually learn, okay, like, should this move accelerate? Like if it's like if you're animating a tennis ball, there's a way to do that. So I want it to hit wherever it hit. When it hits a racket, it should be moving at top speed. How do I make that happen? So it starts out slow, accelerates. How do I do that? If you do it with the keyframe basically tells you what it's doing, and you don't really have to look at and analyze how the move works. When you're doing it by hand, you really have to think that through. And those concepts then can be applied to any type of animation, computer graphics, or any other thing that involves movement. Another thing we like to talk about is, we talked a little bit about lighting before. Color has an impact. You can read color analysis, but I also would encourage people is, how does a color impact you? I was working on a project once a number of years ago, And the director kept telling me, I want to see hot colors. So, okay, red, yellows, oranges. So I kept pushing that. No, hot. Every time I showed him, it was wrong. So finally, I had tried about 500,000 different variations of hot colors. And then you can look at any color book, and they'll tell you the colors I mentioned are hot colors. Blues and, dark greens and things like that. It's like his interpretation and analysis of what hot was a whole different thing than mine and most of the rest of the world. But that was his reality. So, and since he was my client, I wanted to understand that. I didn't make fun of him or anything. It was like, okay, we can do that. And then I switched color palettes, and he was happy. But those colors, the blues and the colors in that range, hit him the same way hot colors hit most other people. So you can read the book, but you also look at what you feel. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really important. How do you develop your, how does this impact you? And each individual is a good judge of that. If you let that happen, if you just pick a color randomly, that's not what I'm talking about. And so if you make that color connection, and this color is bringing across the mood that I want, then the bell goes off and you got it.
So in addition to working on, I guess we would call these more conceptual things, really figuring out how you're presenting an image, I know, and you kind of hit on it, the program being hands-on. Yep. And at the time of us recording this, we're a couple weeks away from a portfolio night that students are making for that. Can you just talk a little bit more about some of those projects as well, just, from a high level of someone going through this program? What are some of these tangible things that they actually develop within? Okay.
Well, because we offer a number of different animation classes that teach different techniques. When we there's two classes where we really have total reign on what you want to do. So animation portfolio, which is a capstone class, and experimental animation, which allows the individual to explore their curiosities. And the animation portfolio class, which Pierre was just referring to, if you're around May 15th at 7:00.
This will release after.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, we had it.
Yeah.
There's you'll see a variety of projects. There's some from stop motion to hand-drawn animation to computer graphics, and some are a combination of all those. And computer graphics would be more like Pixar-style animation. Hand-drawn animation that's just traditional, Disney-esque animation. Mm-hmm. And stop motion is animating puppets or objects. And this year our students are doing any and all of those.
Yeah, and I'll say attending previous portfolio nights, the animation that your students are making within the class are top-notch animation. It's not just a college student did it. You have really prepared them for this, and some of those really stand out. So the students being able to learn some of these more conceptual pieces and then being able to really produce something through that, I think is a great part of the program, and really showing the students getting prepared for that next step of their professional journey.
And that's also one thing that the purpose of this class is to have the students produce a passion project. And we're really encouraging people before the class starts. This is you're going to be working on something for 4 months, and don't just make it an exercise. This is going to show who you are as an animator. You're going to use it in your portfolio to maybe get into another school or get a job. And so those are really important to try your best. So there's an expectation from me, and we have a great professional tutor. And this year we have a second portfolio class too. Anyway, we have that expectation that our students are going to make the best projects they ever did and really buy into what they're doing. Tell that story with the best storytelling you can possibly do. spend extra time on it, make the animation extra special. So those are some of the goals of the class.
So as we get prepared here to wrap up, is there anything else you would recommend to students or young professionals to help them prepare for the field?
I think it's important to ask questions, meet people. We talked about that. I think in a lot of ways, maybe more important to work on your own projects too. So if you're in school, you're going to have assignments, but outside of classes and stuff, if you think maybe I want to do animation, maybe I don't be afraid to try it. Just do it. That's a lot of really great animators started that way. And if you think back, I've studied animation history, and there was a point where nobody did animation 140 years ago because the film didn't exist and there wasn't a way to do it. And so those pioneers, you could be a pioneer. Think about that. You don't know what you can do until you try it. So if you have questions about something and you try it, maybe do a simple little animation project, and it's like, wow, that was really cool. And then push yourself a little bit, do some more. And then you can, there's a lot of organizations. There's a great organization. It's all about animation called Animation World Network, AWN. It's either .com or .org, but I would recommend checking that out. They have articles on animation. They have job listings. They have demo reels and things like that. And it doesn't cost anything. It's really for people interested in animation. And you can learn a lot about the field that way. But I really think you owe it to yourself. If you have any questions, to go ahead and try. If I didn't try my dream to go into animation, I probably I never would have moved to California. I would not have worked on major feature films in Hollywood. I would have probably, who knows what job I would have ended up doing. But I know I would have always wondered if I passed up my passion because I was afraid to try. So I really think the worst thing that'll happen is you find you don't like it. And the best thing that'll happen is it could lead you to an amazing career.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing all that. I do have two more questions for you. One, I'm putting you on the spot here. And this is a question that I normally ask your students as I'm working with them for interviewing. But just because I think this is such an interesting field, and even if you're not interested in animation as a career path, you're still probably interested in animation in some way. So what's the project that you've personally worked on that, I guess two parts here, probably the biggest, most recognizable project that you would say you've worked on, and then the project that you are most proud of or that you had the most fun working on?
I think the most recognizable project I've worked on, there's a few that there were a while ago. In 1990, my company did the opening credits for the Schwarzenegger film Total Recall, which was a really interesting project because we were the title designer's B team. And we got a decent amount of work from him. We never got the big projects, and his A team was griping about how hard it would be to do the technique that he wanted. And that was right up our alley. So when they came to us, we did some tests, and he took them to the producers. And, oh, that's really cool. So that was at the time. Now I'm researching more. At the time, they told us that was the highest, not grossing film, but the highest budgeted film in film history. Now I found out it was number 3, but still it was up there. So that was a major thing. And millions of people, probably more than millions throughout the world have seen that. My most fun commercial work was a job we did for Doug Trumbull. And it was for this, it was a pizza place called Showtime Pizza, and it was doing these booths. Doug Trumbull did the special effects for films like Close Encounters and 2001: A Space Odyssey. And he was setting up his own business, and he hired my studio to do these cool things for 6 weeks. And basically, but that's what we did. And that was the instruction. He'd say, I want to see a little bit more impact, but keep doing it. And, somebody made a mistake. Cool, that could be great. So these were things that were going to go into the showrooms. It was shot at 60 frames a second on 65 millimeter film, and that gave everything. He did a lot of live action stuff. When you see that projected, it looks like a real person is there, not 3D holograms. It looked like a real person was in the screen. There was a life that all this had. So that was another really cool project. And I was doing this technique that I really loved to do. I started exploring it or learning about it when I was in grad school, and I was able to do some, like on my master's thesis, it was using that technique completely. And he was really into that technique as well. So I was just, going crazy with that. It was great. I still make my own films to this day, though. I'm working on a monster movie right now, and it's a spoof on the old Bela Lugosi Dracula film, Frankenstein. And I've got quite a bit done. It's going to be a while before it's 100% done, but I'll let you know when it's released, right. And then you can watch that. But that doesn't have any audience just yet because it's not finished, but.
That's fine. I think I would have to imagine sometimes within this work, the projects you enjoy the most don't even get an audience, but you really just enjoy doing that, and you're producing something that brings you joy.
Yeah, absolutely. That's true. And then that goes to the festival market where you don't really make any money on it. But my last film I finished in 2018, got a fair amount of exposure. It was an abstract film. And that's another conversation, but it is, this would be the same thing unless somebody wanted to pick it up for a series, and then that would be great. But
well, thanks for sharing a little bit more of your personal experience. And I think within this field, just to hear some of those other projects kind of just brings it all together. So as we wrap up here, how can interested listeners find out more about the animation program here at College of DuPage?
I think the best way is by contacting me, Venezia at cod.edu. Venezia is, if you were in Italy and you went to Venice, they would spell it the way that my last name is spelled, but I'll spell it out. So V as in Victor, Enezia at cod.edu. And just tell me you heard the podcast and ask anything you want. And if you want to set up a meeting for a tour or anything like that, I'd be happy to do that.
All right. So you heard that, and you could find the email in the show notes as well. But reach out to Tony, tell him that you listened to the Career Ready podcast, you loved his episode, and he'll be able to connect with you as a follow-up. All right. Thank you, Tony.
Well, you're welcome.
With today's episode, there's no listener question. However, if you have a question, you can submit it to careerpodcast@cod.edu or on social media at COD Career Center, and you may hear the answer in a future episode. Thank you to all our listeners, and special thank you to Tony for joining the Career Ready podcast. We hope you now have a better understanding of animation and the different opportunities within the field.